3 Sundays on the subject of the Gospels, and I shall be leading this one and the one in 2 weeks' time, and Ruth is going to be doing next week's. There are 4 Gospels in the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and there is an unknown number of other Gospels that were written, and they all give a different impression of Jesus. Most of them, of course, didn't get into the Bible, and because they didn't get into the Bible, they may not have been preserved. But we do have snippets of quotes from quite a few of them, and recently some manuscripts have been dug up that weren't known before. So, in most cases, the other Gospels, we've only got a few short snippets, but that doesn't stop the publishers publishing books claiming that they've discovered something completely new about Jesus. We hope this series will provide some perspective. So today I'm going to say something about what the different Gospels say about the end days and seeking and finding. Next Sunday Ruth will describe what they say about women, and in 2 weeks' time I shall compare different accounts of how Jesus is described as divine, if at all. So, to begin with the end days, I'd like you to ask yourself how you would feel if you had no money, your benefits were stopped, you were starving, you had nobody you could rely on, and you couldn't pay the rent. How do you come in? How do you make sense of a situation like that? There are 3 kinds of evaluation that desperate people make. One is ethical. This poverty is all wrong. It shouldn't be like this. Maybe you'll campaign for justice, or you'll join a political party. That's one. The second is ascetic. This world is evil. My body is suffering, but I don't have to let my soul suffer. I can discipline myself to let go of the physical and focus on the spiritual. The third is millenarian. Surely this dreadful situation isn't going to carry on much longer. Somebody surely is going to come along and put things right. Soon. Those 3. They still all happen. Christianity began at a time where people were being driven ever deeper into poverty, and all 3 of these appear in the New Testament and the other Gospels. The one we notice most is the millenarian one, because it seems so strange and predicted things that didn't happen. The classic text is from Mark's Gospel, and Rose, would you read the Mark 13 text?
But when you see the desolating sacrilege set up where it ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. Someone on the housetop must not go down or enter the house to take anything away. Someone in the field must not turn back to get a coat. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that it may not be in winter. For in those days there will be suffering such as has not been from the beginning of the creation that God created until now, no, and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short these days, no one would be saved. But for the sake of the elect whom he chose, he has cut short these days. And if anyone says to you at that time, "Look, here's the Messiah," or "Look, there he is," do not believe it. False messiahs and false prophets will appear and produce signs and omens to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But be alert. I have already told you everything. But in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great glory and power. Then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the 4 winds, from the 4 ends of the earth to the ends of heaven.
Thank you, Rose. You get the message. The new age is coming, and it's going to be dramatic. Matthew, writing 15 or 20 years later, copies most of that, but pushes it further into the future. He's not expecting the end just yet. And Jan, if you'd read that passage from Matthew chapter 24.
And because of the increase of lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold. But anyone who endures to the end will be saved. And this good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come.
Okay. So we'll have to wait till that gets done, going around all the world preaching the gospel. So not just yet. So that explains the delay. A lot of these predictions also appear in the Gospel of Luke, but Luke has a different take again. Who's doing Luke? Leslie?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you are. Yes. Okay.
Once Jesus was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God was coming, and he answered, "The kingdom of God is not coming with things that can be observed, nor will they say, 'Look, here it is,' or 'There it is.' For in fact, the kingdom of God is among you."
Thank you, Leslie. Among you or within you, the Greek word can mean the same. If you translate it among you, it sounds like the ethical response. We can do, together we do something about it. If you translate within you, it sounds more like the ascetic response. It's all focus on your inner self. See the difference? And yet Luke uses a word that could mean either. Now, the other interesting statement on these comes from the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas has got a few interesting statements. Martin, if you would read those from the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah. Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It's in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it's outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it's you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty."
And then the other one.
His disciples said to him, "When will the kingdom come?" Jesus said, "It will not come by waiting for it. It will not be a matter of saying, 'Here it is,' or 'There it is.' Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and men do not see it."
Thank you, Martin. Obviously, on the same subject. Most scholars today think the Gospel of Thomas was written early on, around the time of the Gospels in the Bible, and it sheds light on Jesus, but like the more familiar Gospels, it also has its own interpretation. Mark, like Paul, seems to have really expected ordinary human life on earth to completely change very soon. Luke expected life as it was to carry on much the same, as indeed it did. Thomas is usually associated with the ascetic tradition, but these passages sound more like the ethical traditions, sounds more like, well, what are we going to do about it? The kingdom of God is here, and it's up to us to respond to it now. The Gospel of John is more mystic. It doesn't quite handle that sort of area. Well, of course, what we'd like to know is, what did Jesus really teach? For most of the 20th century, most New Testament scholars thought Mark was right. Jesus did expect an imminent end of the age, and if it was to be like Mark expected, then obviously it didn't happen. Today, scholars still disagree with each other, but there's more emphasis, more support for the idea of Jesus as an ethical teacher, in which case he would have been in continuity with the Jewish tradition of the Old Testament. So there we've got different Gospels depicting Jesus' response to an issue of his day in very different ways. And we might ask, well, which of them makes sense to us? Bearing in mind those differences, there are a few more texts on your handout under the heading Asking and Receiving. I think I've chosen these because there's a connection, and I hope the connection comes across. Rose, if you read the marked one again. Rose is marked.
So I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours.
And then there's Matthew. Jan, if you'd like to read the Matthew passage.
Ask and it will be given to you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives. For everyone who searches finds. And for everyone who knocks, the door will be opened.
Now let's just stop there for a minute. Is that true to your own experience of life? There has been endless debate about these passages. What on earth do they mean? When people have tried it, it doesn't seem to work. If these passages come from that millenarian tradition, they could mean that when the new age comes, it'll be like this. All our needs will be granted. Everything we want, we'll have it. If they come from the ascetic tradition, it might mean stop asking for things you don't need. Well, we don't know what Jesus originally meant. But John's Gospel also provides some interesting texts on this theme. There are actually quite a few in John's Gospel, but I'm going to ask Trish to read just one of them.
On that day you will ask nothing of me. Very truly I tell you, if you ask anything of the Father in my name, he will give it to you. Until now you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask and you will receive, so that your joy may be complete.
Thought it would be appropriate to hear those words from the person who runs the tradecraft stall. And Martin, I've asked Martin to read these last two passages. One is from the Gospel of Thomas, and the other's from the Gospel of the Hebrews. Nobody's quite sure what the Gospel of the Hebrews was, but there are quotes from it, so it must have been around.
Jesus said, "Let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over the all." He shall not cease from seeking until he finds, and having found, he will be amazed. And having been amazed, he will reign, and having reigned, will rest.